DTR. My guess is that most of you know what those initials stand for, but if you need a little help with this, let me give you a hint. All right, if you're a young man and you're in a relationship with a young lady, then the initials DTR, they're probably enough to strike fear into your heart. Many young men dread what's known as the DTR talk. It makes them uncomfortable, so uncomfortable that they will only use the initials DTR. They won't actually say the words. Is this helping? You getting any closer? The objective for many young men is to postpone, to run away from, to put off the DTR talk for as long as possible. In fact, many of them are so afraid of the DTR, they will terminate a relationship when they sense the DTR talk is imminent. Now, do you know what DTR stands for? Here it is. Define the relationship. It is that official talk in a romantic relationship where you determine the level of commitment. You define where the relationship stands and you decide, is this thing going anywhere? Is it casual or is it committed? I remember, true story, I remember going on a date with this girl in high school. First date, we sit down for this meal and she tries to have the DTR talk with me. The DTR on the first date. I got out of there PDQ. That's all I remember. I just ran away. But I'll give you this. There does come a point in a relationship where it's important to define where things are, to see if they've moved past infatuation and admiration and they're moving towards deeper devotion and commitment. Now here's the thing. How you feel about the DTR talk is determined by how committed you are to the relationship. If the relationship is one of convenience, and that's kind of the way you want to keep it. I mean, if it's just kind of this casual weekend thing, then you're going to feel pretty uncomfortable. You're going to feel pretty anxious going into the DTR talk. You don't want to define that relationship. You want things to stay the way they are. But listen, here's what I want to ask you to do. I want to ask you to define the relationship between you and Jesus. Specifically, if we could, let's frame up that conversation by answering this question. Are you a fan or a follower of Jesus? I think that question really helps define where things stand. A fan is defined as an enthusiastic admirer. And a fan of Jesus, they might know the Christian bands. A fan may come to church every week. A fan may open their Bible and take notes. A fan may say grace before the meal. A fan may have a Jesus fish on the back of their bumper. They may make their ringtone on their phone a worship song, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are a follower. And so here's what a fan will do. A fan will find a seat in the stands and they will cheer for Jesus. They will come on the weekends and they will sit in the bleachers and they will cheer. And as long as the season is going well, they'll cheer for Jesus. But if things start to go bad, right, if there's a few losses along the way, then what you'll find is that the bleachers empty out and many of the fans go home. See, fans want a relationship with Jesus. They just want it on their terms. And so they want to follow Jesus close enough to get all the benefits, but not so close that it requires any sacrifice or commitment. What they're looking for, I think you would call a no strings attached relationship. Or yeah, you come on the weekends, you sit in the bleachers, you connect with Him from time to time, but it doesn't really mess with your life. It doesn't really change anything. I saw this report a number of years ago on what they called the new vegetarians, okay? So these new vegetarians were younger people who called themselves vegetarians, but they still ate meat a lot of the time. And they interviewed this girl, her name was Christy, and she said, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat bacon. That's what she said. I'm a vegetarian, but I still eat bacon. Well, isn't a vegetarian by definition someone who doesn't eat meat? And isn't bacon considered a meat? So how can she call herself a vegetarian? See the problem? And so the real vegetarians got upset with the new vegetarians. They said, look, you need to change your name. Call yourself something else, but don't call yourself vegetarians if you're going around and ordering bacon. And so the new vegetarians, get this, they came up with a new name for themselves, and here's what they call themselves now. Flexitarians. Flexitarians. They don't eat meat unless they really like it, unless they really want it. Kind of like that. I mean, by definition, I'm a flexitarian. I don't eat meat unless it's being served. Yeah, then I'll eat it. And the problem is they were calling themselves vegetarians, but it didn't reflect what they were committed to, and that's what has happened. For many people, they call themselves followers of Christ. They call themselves Christians, but it doesn't really reflect their commitment to Christ. They're not actually trying to follow Jesus. And so what we probably need is a new name. And so I think fan works. Fans of Jesus. Just enthusiastic admirers. The deal is, though, Jesus was never really interested in fans. He wanted followers. And in Luke 9:23, Jesus defines a follower. And here's what he says. If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. So followers deny themselves. They take up their cross and they follow him. That's how Jesus defines the relationship he wants with you. My concern is that all too easily, a church can become a stadium full of fans instead of a community of completely committed followers. All too easily, it can become a place where people gather together and cheer for Jesus on the weekends, but at work, at school, in their homes, in their neighborhoods, doesn't really have much impact. And so many of us approach our relationship with Jesus that way. We don't mind making some minor changes in our lives, but the thing is, Jesus wants to turn our lives upside down. We might be fine with him doing a little touch-up work. Jesus wants complete renovation. We come thinking tune-up. Tune-up's fine. Jesus is thinking overhaul. We think what we need is just a little bit of a makeup job, but Jesus is thinking makeover. We think a little bit of decorating is required. He wants a complete remodel. You see the difference between a fan and a follower? So I got this email a number of months ago. It was sent to me from a person on our church staff who takes care of church membership records. Her job is to just keep track of who are members and who are no longer members. Anyway, she gets this email from someone who was a member, and they said, I don't want to be a member of your church anymore. And the only reason they gave, the only thing they said is, I don't like Kyle's sermons. Well, that begs for some explanation, right? I wanted to know about this person. I checked the name and address to make sure, it wasn't my wife. That would have been a problem. But I was clear there, and so I just picked up the phone and I called the person, didn't know him. And when he picked up the phone, I said, hey, this is Kyle Eidelman. I understand you're leaving the church because you don't like my sermons. And it's caught him off guard. I mean, there was some awkward silence, and then he kind of started rambling, trying to explain what he meant. But somewhere in his lengthy explanation, he said something. And I wrote it down because what he said, I think in some ways just defines the relationship for him and for many others. And here's what he said. He said, whenever I listen to one of the sermons, I feel like you're trying to interfere with my life. You hear what he's saying? I'm fine coming to church. I'm fine sitting in the bleachers and being in the cheering section for Jesus. That's all well and good. But I don't want Jesus to interfere with my life. But when Jesus defines the relationship he wants with you, He invites you to get up out of your seat, to pick up a cross, and to follow him. It's not enough to just say, yeah, I'm all for Jesus. The idea is not just to repeat a prayer after a pastor or raise your hand and say, well, that's good, I'm in. I got my ticket. I'll take my seat in the stands. And he's called us to something much deeper than that. The invitation is not to become a fan. The invitation is to take up a cross and to follow Jesus.